In 1966, China entered one of the most turbulent periods in its modern history. It was called the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution, but it would later be remembered by many as 10 years of chaos. Officially, the movement was launched to defend communism from enemies who were said to be hiding inside the government, schools, factories, and even families. In practice, it became a nationwide upheaval that shattered institutions, turned young people into political enforcers, destroyed cultural heritage, and exposed millions to humiliation, violence, imprisonment, exile, or death. To understand the Cultural Revolution, it is not enough to see it as a spontaneous student rebellion or a simple policy campaign. It was also a struggle over power, ideology, loyalty, and memory. Mao Zedong believed that revolutionary spirit was fading and that China risked sliding back toward capitalism and old traditions. His answer was not gradual reform. It was mass mobilization. By the mid-1960s, Mao was still the symbolic center of the Chinese Communist Party, but his practical authority had been weakened. Earlier disasters, especially the Great Leap Forward, had damaged his standing, while other leaders focused on rebuilding the economy and restoring order. Mao feared that this pragmatic approach represented something deeper, a bureaucratic class drifting away from revolution. He argued that capitalist and bourgeois elements had infiltrated the party and society. In his view, enemies of socialism were not only outside China, they were inside the system itself. This idea made the Cultural Revolution especially dangerous, because it turned suspicion inward. A teacher, official, writer, scientist, parent, or longtime communist veteran could suddenly be accused of carrying old ideas or betraying the revolution. The battlefield was not just government policy. It was culture, education, personal behavior, and the definition of political loyalty. The movement began to accelerate in May 1966, when Mao, with support from the Cultural Revolution Group, pushed the claim that bourgeois forces were trying to restore capitalism. The message was dramatic and simple: the revolution was in danger, and ordinary people, especially the young, had to rise up. Mao urged people to bombard the headquarters, meaning they should challenge entrenched authorities, even within the Communist Party itself. He also declared that rebellion was justified. These slogans mattered because they gave political permission to attack superiors. In a society where party hierarchy had enormous weight, this was explosive. Students could denounce principals. Workers could challenge managers. Young radicals could accuse veteran officials. The Cultural Revolution took the language of liberation and turned it into a weapon against anyone suspected of insufficient revolutionary purity. Once that permission spread, control became difficult to recover. The most visible early force of the Cultural Revolution was the Red Guards. Many were students, young people who believed they were defending Mao and purifying China. They formed groups across the country, wore armbands, carried Mao's quotations, and treated his words almost like sacred instructions. For some, participation offered purpose, belonging, and status. For others, it was also a way to settle local grudges or escape the authority of parents and teachers. During Red August in Beijing in 1966, the violence became impossible to ignore. Schools became sites of denunciation and abuse. Teachers and intellectuals were beaten, humiliated, and sometimes killed. Public rituals of accusation taught people that survival depended on proving loyalty. The Red Guards were not one unified army with a single command structure. They were a mass movement, and that made them unpredictable. Competing factions could each claim to represent Mao's true line. One of the Cultural Revolution's major targets was the so-called Four Olds: old ideas, old culture, old customs, and old habits. This campaign aimed to break the visible and invisible links between modern China and its pre-revolutionary past. In practice, it often meant destroying temples, ancestral tablets, books, art, religious objects, historical sites, and family possessions. Street names were changed. Traditional clothing, hairstyles, manners, and rituals could become political evidence. The attack on the Four Olds was not only physical destruction, it was psychological pressure. People were forced to distance themselves from their own families, educations, beliefs, and memories. Cultural heritage became suspicious because it represented continuity, and continuity could be framed as resistance to revolution. The result was a profound rupture. Objects that had survived wars and dynasties could vanish in hours because a crowd declared them politically dangerous. As the movement spread, persecution expanded far beyond famous officials. Tens of millions of people were targeted in different ways. Some were accused because of class background, family history, education, profession, or alleged political attitude. The so-called 5 black categories marked landlords, rich peasants, counter-revolutionaries, bad elements, and rightists as especially vulnerable. Intellectuals and scientists were often mocked as the stinking old ninth, a phrase that captured the contempt directed at educated professionals. The danger was that identity itself could become a sentence. A person did not need to commit a clear crime. A family label, a past association, a foreign connection, or a careless sentence could be enough. Public struggle sessions forced victims to confess, bow, wear signs, or endure beatings in front of neighbors and colleagues. Fear spread because accusation was contagious. Defending someone else could make you suspicious too. The Cultural Revolution also attacked the machinery of normal life. Schools and universities were closed or disrupted, and the national college entrance examinations were cancelled. This created a generation whose education was interrupted at a crucial moment. Instead of studying, many young people were drawn into political campaigns, factional struggles, or later sent away from cities. The Down to the Countryside movement relocated more than 10 million urban youth to rural areas. Officially, they were supposed to learn from peasants and become remolded through labor. For many, it meant years of hardship, isolation, and lost opportunity. The long-term consequences were enormous. Careers were delayed, families were separated, and China lost years of formal training for future professionals. The Cultural Revolution claimed to create a more revolutionary society, but it often weakened the very knowledge, trust, and institutional stability needed for a modern country to function. By 1967, the Cultural Revolution had moved from denunciations and symbolic attacks into struggles for direct power. Radical groups began seizing control from local governments and party branches, replacing them with revolutionary committees. In theory, these committees represented a new revolutionary order. In practice, they often emerged from factional conflict. Police, courts, and legal institutions were damaged or bypassed, which meant there were fewer restraints on violence. Rival groups all claimed to defend Mao, but they fought over who had the legitimate revolutionary line. In some places, this produced armed clashes, raids, and near civil war conditions. The chaos revealed a central contradiction. Mao had encouraged rebellion against authority, but a state cannot function indefinitely when every authority can be declared counter-revolutionary. The Cultural Revolution unleashed political energy that even its leaders struggled to direct. Revolutionary purity became a contest without stable rules. The human cost was staggering, though exact numbers remain debated. Estimates of deaths commonly range from 1 to 2 million. Violence took many forms: beatings, executions, forced suicides, imprisonment, torture, local massacres, and factional warfare. Some regions experienced especially brutal episodes, including massacres in Guangxi, Beijing, Inner Mongolia, Guangdong, Yunnan, and Hunan. The Guangxi violence became infamous not only for killings but also for reported acts of cannibalism, a horrifying sign of how far political dehumanization could go. These were not simply random outbursts. They were often connected to campaigns that divided people into enemies and loyalists, then removed moral protection from those labeled as enemies. When political identity replaces human identity, cruelty becomes easier to justify. The Cultural Revolution shows how ideology, fear, and local revenge can combine into violence that later generations struggle to comprehend. At the top of the political system, the Cultural Revolution was also a drama of elite power. Senior leaders were purged, including Liu Shaoqi, Deng Xiaoping, and Peng Dehuai. These were not marginal figures, they were central to the revolution and the state. Their downfall showed that revolutionary legitimacy offered no permanent protection. Lin Biao, once Mao's chosen successor, rose during the movement but fell dramatically in 1971. After his fall, the Gang of Four became increasingly influential, especially from 1972 onward. This group, which included Mao's wife Jiang Qing, became associated with the radical continuation of Cultural Revolution politics. The shifting alliances at the top mattered because they shaped campaigns across the country. Ordinary people experienced slogans and accusations locally, but those waves were often tied to struggles among leaders. The Cultural Revolution was both mass politics from below and power politics from above. The movement finally ended after Mao's death in 1976. Soon afterward, the Gang of Four was arrested, symbolically closing the radical phase. But ending the Cultural Revolution did not immediately repair the damage. China had to decide how to remember a period that involved both official leadership and mass participation. In 1978, Deng Xiaoping emerged as China's paramount leader, replacing Mao's successor Hua Guofeng as the dominant figure in practice. Deng and his allies introduced the Baoyuan Fanzheng program, often understood as an effort to correct chaos and restore order. They also launched reform and opening up, moving China toward economic modernization and away from the constant class struggle politics of the Cultural Revolution. The New Enlightenment movement helped loosen the ideological grip of that era. China did not simply return to where it had been in 1966. It moved into a different political and economic chapter. In 1981, the Communist Party publicly acknowledged that the Cultural Revolution had caused severe damage. It described the period as responsible for the most serious setback and heaviest losses suffered by the people, the country, and the party since the founding of the People's Republic. That official judgment was important, but memory remains complicated. For victims and families, the Cultural Revolution is personal trauma. For historians, it is a warning about unchecked power, ideological absolutism, destroyed institutions, and the mobilization of youth against imagined enemies. For contemporary China, it is a politically sensitive subject because it raises questions about Mao, party authority, public memory, and national identity. The Cultural Revolution was not only a decade of violence. It was a lesson in how quickly society can fracture when suspicion becomes virtue, culture becomes evidence, and loyalty becomes a matter of survival. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.